Hey everybody, Garcia here, and today I'm going to be comparing Trekking the National Parks, 2nd edition, to Trekking the World, the latest game in this series of games. Now, I've already done a video comparing Trekking the National Parks, 2nd edition here, to the first release, and you can check that out. I'll put a link below if you want to see that. But now I'm going to be taking a look at the latest one from the Trekking the Parks part, or line, to this latest edition of the game, or, innovation of the game. There's a lot that these two will share, and a lot that's going to be different. So, right away we've got, of course, the boxes, which are the same size, and the themes, of course. This is going to take place over the entirety of the U.S., and this, the whole world, where you are visiting parks in one, and touristy locations in the other one, or just beautiful places around the world, okay? So I'm going to show you the boards, I'm going to show you some of the components, and then I'll briefly talk about some of the difference mechanically that you can find from one to the other. Here we go. Let's start with Trekking the World, the board for that. We've got here all the continents, very colorful board, very interesting shape on this board as well. As you can see, it has it's meant to look like a map with the borders being tapered in to look like a globe. And then, all of the different locations and everything, as well as, and this is nice and important, a reminder down here of the player turn, what you get to do on your turn, as well as down here, what triggers the end game, okay? So that's what the board looks like. I find it very attractive. Let's move this. As you can see, the other one is below it, and it is a bigger board to see the National Parks board. So let me go ahead and move that out of the way. And there you have Trekking the National Parks. A lot more brown, of course. This one's not really what I would call a colorful board. It is clear. It's easy to see everything. There's a lot of names for all of these locations, as you can see. And all of the lines and everything makes sense. I like the artwork that is featured on the background of the entire thing. But it isn't as readily appealing, right? It is not as attractive, as bright and colorful and sort of welcoming in general as the world map. But of course, a lot of the places you are visiting are nature themed, most of them I would say, or basically all of them would be that. So this color palette kind of works for me. I think it's okay. I think the tones they are using here do look good. And while I wish that they had that sort of player reminder somewhere on this board, I don't dislike the size of it. I think it's very, it utilizes the space that is here well, and leaves you plenty of space between all of these connections so that you can easily move around and all of that. The two games at their core have a similar idea. The objective is to take your traveler, move around different locations, collect tokens from those locations. You'll score ideally some victory points from those, and that's different between the two. And then visit, the hot spots where you want to go. In this case, parks. In this case, like I said, attractions and beautiful places around the world. So that's the same idea, and then whoever has the most points at the end of the game is going to be the winner. So here are the playing pieces in parks. They are quite large, chunky pieces. They do fit this board very well. They are much smaller in world, and they're also custom to each other. So while you'll see these have the same shape over here in trekking parks, the world ones are all different. They're very nice colors and they're custom shapes, okay? The pieces that sit on the board in parks are these plastic dots, basically. And they work well. I think they have good coloration. I think they're easy to see on the map. In world, they are wooden cubes. It's just the sort of typical wooden cubes that you will put at these locations everywhere and then go and pick them up. The cubes work okay, especially considering they end up on a board that you have where you collect these cubes. There's no such thing in parks. You just keep them in front of you, okay? But they're fine. I do like the little plastic dots a little bit more. I think they look neater on the map rather than sort of the mess of cubes. But I like the way that both managed to handle this. The player cards, the ones you'll be using both to move and to collect specific sets, are these for parks, and they have on their faces a symbol and a number, those two things being not related to each other. With this card, you can move one step somewhere on the map. Say I can move from here to here with that card, or I can use the symbol to visit a park, and I'll come back to that. In World, it holds the same idea. These are the cards in World. As you can see there, they are slightly smaller cards. They are linen finished cards, which these are not. They handle much better. They are higher quality. And as you can see, same idea. The number will let you move around. The symbol will let you visit a location in the world. So as far as the cards go, I think the ones from parks have a little more personality. They're a little more cartoony, perhaps. And the new ones, less so, but the new ones are much better cards. Just higher quality, easier to manage, easier to shuffle, the whole thing. These are wonderful cards. They really work well. So that's those components, and they're the main component you're going to be handling in the game. Now, I talked about movement, and in fact, the movement is handled in both games the same way, except for one very vital rule, and that is when it comes to turn structure, in trekking the national parks, you take on your turn 2 actions, and those actions can be move, grab a card, visit a park, things like that. Over here in World, you will first move, and that's required. You have to discard a card, you have to move. And then you can draw 2 cards on your turn, or take a tour, or journey, okay? And I'll talk about the difference between take a tour and journey a little bit later on. There is a new mechanism in this that isn't in the previous edition here. But what are you doing with these symbols? Let's talk about that, all right? You're visiting, like I said, locations. So here are the parks cards. They will have a photograph on them. They're these large format cards. They tell you where you're visiting. They give you a little bit of a blurb about the park itself. And then down here, they show you a number of victory points and the symbols you need on these cards to visit that location. So you travel over there, you discard these cards, and you claim this park for, in this case, 10 victory points, 7 over here at the Dry Tortugas. And again, they have a photo in them, whereas World is all artwork. Gorgeous artwork, but it's all artwork, okay? So I know some folks like photographs in their games like this, especially one that's about real-world places. I think it's okay. I think it works all right. I do like the artwork better, though. So that's those for this game. And then the ones for World look like this. They'll be portrait instead of landscape. They'll have an illustration. They're also, again, linen finished cards, so higher quality cards. And then same thing. They'll show you the symbols you need down here, number of victory points, where in the world this place is, if you need a little help finding it, and a piece of artwork that showcases just some gorgeous locations in the world, as well as some beautiful artistic illustrations. I mean, the artists for these are incredibly talented. These are truly beautiful places. So there you go. Those are the differences in these two piles, but they function the same way and they accomplish the same thing. There will be a few of them face up for both, with the only difference being there's a mechanism in World here which lines up these cards. And you use this, which has little 3 victory point chips and 5 victory point chips, to give some of these locations a higher value. The way that works is you'll have several of these face up, and the last 2 in the line are below the 3 points and the 5 points. And if you manage to go there and collect this one, you get the card and the chip, and then everything slides over, making this one now more valuable, and whatever was over here slides under the 3, and so they make the last 2 in the line there have priority. People will fight over those more astutely because they're worth more victory points. I like that. Certainly not the first place I've seen that mechanism. It's something that's fairly common, but I like that it gives you an incentive to go for these 2 locations more so than any of the other locations. You might not still do it because it's out of your way or you just don't have the cards or what have you, but I like the concept and I like the mechanisms. By the way, you might have seen this adorable little chunky bear sitting over here. It's a start player token. It's not really that important or necessary, but it is in parks, and there's no counterpart for that in Trekking the World. As far as collecting these wooden cubes around the locations or the plastic beads over here, having the most of them is going to give you some victory points in the game. But the two games handle that differently, okay? So over here in parks, at the end of the game, if you have the most of a color, you are going to get this card that matches it, and you're going to get a number of victory points. So most red stones, you're going to get 6 victory points. And then second most is going to get 4. Same thing for all of the other ones with varying amounts of victory points, because the plastic beads, the stones as they call them themselves, there are different frequencies of them, okay? So the ones that there are fewer of are going to be worth fewer victory points. And that's all there is to that. You collect them, they're worth something at the end of the game. That's it. Over here, there are a lot more mechanisms tied around that. As you collect these, you will put them on this player board you have in front of you. And as soon as you have 2 of something, so let's say as soon as I have 2 of the yellow ones, I am going to collect the matching tile that matches that color, okay? So let's do the white ones just because I have that one out. So let's say I've collected a yellow one, and I got a blue one, and I got 2 white ones, and as soon as I have 2, I will collect this that says most postcards. That's what the white ones represent, and this is going to be worth 9 victory points to me. Unless someone gets more of the postcards, the white cubes, in the game than I currently have, and they'll take this away from me. They don't just get to match me, they have to best me. And then they'll take it away. So these will move around during the game. Whereas these, we don't even assign until the very end. It doesn't matter. You just collect them, you can look around the table and go, I got to get more red ones than so-and-so over there so I can try to win that. But you don't do it during the game, which I do like. I like the presence of this on the table in front of someone as a beacon that, hey, I've got all these points. But besides that, there's another thing you score for. And as you can see here, it is for collecting different colors. So as soon as I get one of these, the red ones, which represent clothing you're buying around the world, as soon as you have a completed column, you're going to be earning at the end of the game 5 victory points. If I can complete the next one entirely, I'm going to get 10, 17, 25, and so on, okay? So that's another thing that you'll be scoring for at the end of the game. And you will notice there are simply more things to score for in Trekking the World than there are in Trekking the National Parks. Another one is these tiles that are randomly placed attached to each continent in the world. And the way you earn these is by completely gaining, so the last person to gain a cube from that continent, the last one taken, that player will also earn this. And it has some number of victory points on the back that you will secretly look at, in this case 6 victory points, and you will take that and hide it for the rest of the game. You never know which one you're going to get, right? So they go between, the 6s and 5s and 2s and 4s. So being the last one to empty out a continent of these cubes will get you some victory points, which is another thing to consider because you might keep an eye on it. You might double back if you see something sort of getting cleaned up and try to time it correctly so you can jump in there, take the last one. Not only do you get the cube for this, but you'll also get those bonus victory points. And again, there's nothing like it over here. No bonus for sniping something like that. There's one final difference I want to talk about, and that is major parks over here in Trekking the National Parks and the journey ability in World, okay? So, major parks, the way that works, I already showed you some of these parks over here. The different parks, the requirements, the number of victory points. Obviously, you need to be at Big Bend to claim Big Bend. But there are also in here these major parks, which are these with the red border. And the way this works is you'll shuffle these up and reveal 3 at the beginning of the game. So these will be on the table somewhere. And the players besides their character, they also have 3 tents in the game. So these tents, you will begin with them in your pool, and you'll be able to place them out onto these parks if you go there and pay the cost, okay? So if I go to the Everglades in Florida and I discard the 2 canoe cards, I am going to put my tent on there to let me know I've been there, I've visited. I don't claim the card. Everybody can go there. And I have the 5 points at the end of the game, but from now on, I also have a special ability, okay? And the special abilities are right here in the rulebook. They tell you, what you do. So, for example, the Everglades says, I may immediately swap 1 stone I have collected with any 1 stone another player has collected. It's a one-time ability, okay? This one over here says for the remainder of the game, I may use 2 Trek cards as if they were 1 wild card. So I can use 2 to become any one other thing I might need. This one is immediately draw 2 cards from the top of the deck. That's a one-time thing. So as you can see, there's one-time abilities and some that stick around. So that's something that is not really represented over here. But then again, there is something here, these journey cards, that are not represented in parks. So let's talk about that. At the beginning of the game, when you're setting up this game, you're going to shuffle up these A journey cards and reveal 1. And you are going to shuffle up the B journey cards and reveal 1. The players, after they do their mandatory move, they get to choose an option. They can draw 2 cards, fine. There's some face-up cards you can draw from in both games. You can take a tour, which is visiting a place, or you could journey. To journey, you pick one of these 2, you discard 2 cards that match, that have the same symbol, and then you take the action listed here. You can do that anywhere you want. So if I do this one, I'll discard 2 matching cards, and I can draw 2 cards from the deck, and then gain 5 points, which is definitely a viable strategy to focus on these, especially when you have cards you don't think you're going to need for something else anytime soon. And then this one, called a bumpy ride, says move 1 cube in your suitcase to another row. It now counts as that color, and draw 3 cards from the deck. So these cards, as you can tell, they replace themselves with different cards, at least in this situation. And there's a few different ones of these, right? Move to any location with no cube, take a tour for 1 fewer icon. Great. As long as the cube is gone, I can just jump to somewhere and take the tour there, assuming that card is face up, and save an icon. Swap locations with another player, draw 3 cards from the deck. Take a tour for 1 fewer icon, gain 3 points. Move up to 6, gain 3 points. Move to any location. Move up to 4, draw 2 cards from the deck. Move to any airport, draw 3 cards from the deck. So, because these 2 will be the same for the entire game, and they will be different from game to game, it really changes the things players are able to do. And I like that. I like the variability of that setup and the availability of something that isn't perhaps obvious. Just sort of slowly moving around, getting somewhere, cashing in cards. You now might have, if you remember to use these, and they're right here for you, you can probably get around some other limitations you may be coming up against. So there you go. Those are the journey cards. And that's basically everything there is to these 2. I like both of these games. I think they're well made. I think they are both engaging and attractive. Mechanically, I generally like Trekking the World more. I think it's a refined version in many ways of what Trekking the National Parks did, and then Trekking the National Parks 2nd Edition did above and beyond that, which is what we're looking at here. There's a couple of things I don't like as much. Being forced to move, I think, can sometimes be a little bit annoying. Mechanically, that's the way it works, and I guess thematically, the idea is you can't control if you jump on a plane, if you can't choose to stop halfway, I guess. But generally speaking, I find all the sources of victory points, collecting those things in your suitcase, the cubes, getting these for completely emptying continents, completing the cards, utilizing these. I find that combination of victory points to be very engaging and interesting. But I don't think I'll be giving up my trekking the national parks quite yet. If you haven't played either one of these, I would just say pick the one that looks better for you, because it's definitely not a replacement. This is certainly not something that I think will replace trekking the national parks in your collection. So there you go, everybody. Hopefully that was a little bit educational and you got to see these two games side by side. So that's going to do it for me. My name is Z Garcia. Thanks for sticking around. I'll see you on the next one.